Nobody saw the ending coming. A man who spent 30 years turning steel and grease into the most celebrated custom cars in America, who launched the careers of designers that went on to work for Ford and win national awards. That man died alone in a hospital room in February 2008, still fighting to save a shop that had already been bleeding for years. His name was Boyd Coddington, and the crew he hired and burned through across 5 seasons of television. Every single one of them had to figure out what came next when the cameras stopped. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what happened to each of them, and you'll understand why the story of this show is really a story about what happens when one man's genius and one man's chaos live inside the same body. The story doesn't start in a garage in California. It starts on a dairy farm in Rupert, Idaho. Boyd Leon Coddington was born on August 28, 1944, in a part of Idaho where the nearest city felt like a foreign country. His father ran the farm. The family built and fixed things themselves. There were no mechanics on call. If something broke, you figured it out. That mentality, fix it yourself, do it right, or it doesn't get done, followed Boyd for the rest of his life. It also made him impossible to work for. At age 13, he got his first car. Not a gift, a trade. He swapped his prized shotgun for a 1931 Chevrolet truck he couldn't legally drive for 3 more years. That was Boyd. He didn't wait for permission. He completed a 3-year machinist apprenticeship in Idaho and moved to California in 1968 with a toolbox and a very specific plan. During the day, he worked as a machinist at Disneyland. At night and on weekends, he built hot rods in the backyard of his home in Cyprus. For years, that was his entire life. Disneyland paid the bills. The garage was where the real work happened. He has said in interviews that it was his quality standard that eventually forced the decision. You can only sustain 2 full-time jobs for so long before something breaks. And he wasn't willing to let the cars be the thing that broke. In 1977, he opened Hot Rods by Boyd in Stanton, California. His first serious customer was a man named Vern Luce. Luce brought Boyd a 1933 coupe. Boyd built it exactly the way he saw it in his head. Clean lines, billet aluminum details, nothing fussy, nothing overdone. That car won the Al Sloniker Award at the 1981 Oakland Roadster Show. The hot rod world noticed, and the Boyd look was born. Here's what that moment actually meant, because most people who know the name Boyd Coddington stop here, and that's where the real story is just beginning. The Boyd look wasn't just a style preference. It was a philosophy that changed what a hot rod could be. Before Boyd, a hot rod was typically an old body dropped onto a newer frame, a jalopy cleaned up and made to run faster. Boyd changed the definition. He pioneered the use of billet aluminum, machining custom parts from a solid block of metal, rather than stamping or casting them. Wheels, trim, dashboard details, all machined from scratch, with a precision that didn't exist in the hot rod world before him. He didn't just build better cars. He invented a new category. In 1988, he launched Boyd's Wheels Inc. to manufacture and market his billet aluminum wheel designs commercially. A year later, he got the call that put him on a different level entirely. Billy Gibbons, the guitarist and frontman of ZZ Top, had an idea for a custom 1948 Cadillac sedanette. The design was conceived with designer Larry Erickson on a bar napkin near the Mexican border. Boyd got the commission. His team spent months chopping the roof, sectioning the hood and front fenders into a single tilting nose, Frenching the headlights, building a 500 cubic inch Cadillac V8 with custom fuel injection, and finishing the exterior in deep purple flake over calfskin leather. The license plate read, I-8 Tokyo. The car was called Cadzilla. It landed the cover of Hot Rod magazine and toured with the band. Columnist Gray Baskerville called it the most incredible automotive transformation he'd ever witnessed. But inside the shop that produced it, the atmosphere was never easy. The next generation of American automotive design grew up inside Boyd's operation. Chip Foose, who would go on to host Overhaulin' and become the most decorated car designer of his era, started working for Boyd part-time after graduating design school, and eventually became president of Hot Rods by Boyd. Jesse James, who became the star of Monster Garage, launched his fabrication career inside Boyd's shop. Larry Erickson, who went on to become chief designer of the Ford Mustang and Thunderbird, credits his early work with Boyd for setting the direction of his entire career. But in 1998, the first wall hit, and it hit hard. The financial trouble that hit Boyd in 1998 wasn't caused by bad cars. The cars were still excellent. The trouble came from one bankrupt customer who owed him $465,000, and when that customer couldn't pay, Boyd's Wheels Inc. went under with debts that reportedly reached $15 million. On January 30, 1998, both Boyd's Wheels Inc. and its subsidiary Hot Rods by Boyd filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Manufacturing at the wheel operations shut down in March of that year. Roughly 130 workers were let go. Boyd resigned as chief executive. The reorganization plan was eventually approved by the bankruptcy court in January 1999. But by then, the damage had been done in ways that went beyond the balance sheet. Chip Foose left when the company folded. He walked out of Boyd's shop with $700 in the bank. He had turned down a job offer from Ford and another from the Volkswagen Beetle redesign team to stay at Boyd's, and when the bankruptcy hit, there was no job to stay for. He started Foose Design out of his own pocket and rebuilt from scratch. The relationship between the two men didn't survive it. Boyd never forgave Foose for what he saw as a betrayal. Foose, in a 2006 interview, said simply that Boyd had chosen to have no further relations with him since the day he stopped working there. Boyd himself filed for personal bankruptcy in 2001, listing just $8,800 in assets against $529,000 in personal debt. His attorney stated at the time that creditors left him no choice. Then, while trying to rebuild, he made a decision that would come back to him legally. To avoid emissions restrictions and tax liabilities, he began registering his custom-fabricated cars as antique automobiles, vehicles that didn't qualify for that designation because so many original components had been replaced. California officials pursued the case and charged him with a misdemeanor under what they called a ship of Theseus theory. If you replace enough parts of a thing, it stops being that thing. Boyd pleaded guilty on April 7, 2005. He paid a price. Then he rebuilt. Again. And if you think that was the hardest part of the story, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. The cameras arrived in 2004. 5 seasons, 76 episodes, TLC first, then Discovery Channel. And what they captured was not a showcase of craft. It was a portrait of pressure. American Hot Rod followed Boyd and his crew in La Habra, California, as they built custom cars under deadlines that routinely seemed impossible. The builds were real, the cars were real, but the environment inside that shop, the firings, the confrontations, the walkouts, that was real too. Boyd was not an easy man to work for. He was demanding in a way that employees described as relentless. Foreman Dwayne Meyer ran the day-to-day with an iron fist that alienated as many people as it motivated. The show documented a shop where turnover wasn't just common, it was almost the product itself. Viewers tuned in to see who would quit, who would get fired, and whether the car would get finished before the deadline. What made it different from American Chopper or Monster Garage was the level of genuine skill on display. These weren't television performers playing mechanics. They were craftsmen who had spent careers mastering their trades. The drama was real, but so was the work. Roy Schmidt was the first cast member the audience lost. He appeared in seasons 1 through 3 as a veteran metalworker, old school, soft-spoken, technically precise. He had been fighting lung cancer for years. He passed away on October 27, 2005, at the age of 64, during the filming of Season 4. He never finished the season. Boyd dedicated a build to his memory. The shop felt it. The show made clear something that Boyd's reputation had always suggested. The man could produce extraordinary cars and extraordinary conflict in equal measure. The question every viewer eventually asked was whether the conflict was necessary, whether the pressure actually built better cars, or whether it simply made for better television. Most people who think about this show stop right there, but the real answer starts with Charlie Hutton. Charlie Hutton was Boyd's body shop supervisor and by most accounts, one of the most gifted automotive painters in the country. He didn't seek Boyd out, Boyd called him. Hutton was 24 years old, working on a 1933 three-window coupe, when the phone rang and Boyd Coddington himself was on the other end, asking if he'd like to do a project for the shop. Hutton has said he genuinely didn't believe it was real at first. It was. And he spent years inside that shop becoming one of the best in his field. Then, during the 42 Woody build, Charlie left. He had accepted work from Chip Foose, by this point Boyd's most bitter professional rival, and when Boyd found out, he told Charlie he was never coming back. Boyd considered it a personal betrayal on top of a business decision. For him, the two things were the same. Charlie didn't look back. He appeared on the television shows Rides and Overhauling, alongside Foose, and eventually won a Riddler Award, one of the most prestigious honors in custom car building, given annually at the Detroit Autorama, to the best engineered and best finished car in the show. He now owns his own custom paint shop in Idaho. Andrew "Beetle" Bailey Pedersen, another body man from Idaho, left at the same time as Charlie and went to work for Foose as well. Mike Curtis, the machine shop supervisor, was fired during the run of the show, not for the quality of his work, but for designing wheels for Foose in his free time. Boyd saw it as treason. Curtis later appeared on Overhauling alongside Charlie, and now lends his name to a custom wheel business in California. Scott Parker spent seasons 2 through 4 at the shop, left to work for himself, and ended up working for Foose anyway. Al Simon, the chassis builder, quit during the Bud Light build, returned, and eventually left for good during the '59 Corvette project. He now runs his own shop in Riverside, California. Willie Johnstone, the custom painter, went home, back to New Zealand. He opened his own paint shop in Tauranga, and by all accounts, never looked back. Dan "Chicago" Sobieski, who appeared in every single season of the show, opened his own shop after the camera stopped. Dwayne Mayer, the man who ran Boyd's floor for 5 seasons, and who many crew members blamed for the culture that drove good people away, also runs his own shop. And here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got, until now. Not everyone who worked at the shop was there because of a job posting. Boyd's son, Chris Coddington, ran the custom wheel sales division and appeared in all 5 seasons of the show. When Boyd's Wheels was sold to American Racing during season 4, Chris lost the role that had defined his time at the shop. He made one more appearance in season 5, the Hershey tribute car, but the family foothold in the business was already loosening. Boyd's wife at the time of the show, Jo Coddington, ran the collectibles store and the consignment side of the operation. She handled the corporate builds and appeared in all 5 seasons. She was the one who issued the public statement in early 2008, expressing optimism about Boyd's recovery from surgery. Boyd had been hospitalized on New Year's Eve, 2007, admitted to Presbyterian Inter-Community Hospital in Whittier, California, discharged briefly, then readmitted days later. The surgery was for a perforated colon. Doctors told the family to expect a full recovery. Boyd died on February 27, 2008. He was 63 years old. His chronic diabetes had compounded the surgical complications in ways that the initial prognosis hadn't anticipated. Toxins from the perforated colon had damaged his organs. The recovery that everyone expected never came. Joe wrote to local papers and sent cards to the hospital staff, thanking them for the care he received. There was no litigation, there was grief, and then there was the business of closing down. The shop, the physical building in La Habra, where 5 seasons of television had been filmed, where Cadzilla was built, where Chip Foose and Jesse James had started their careers, closed its doors for the final time on June 20, 2008, less than 4 months after the man who built it died. Chip Foose, when asked about Boyd in the years after his death, said something that stands out. He said that a lot of people thought Boyd was rude, but the truth was that Boyd was shy around people. By the time Boyd passed in early 2008, the two of them had been back on speaking terms, only just. But it had happened. One phone call, one conversation, that's all it took to change the direction of everything. Here is what gets lost in the story of the show, and the drama and the firings. Boyd Coddington won the Grand National Roadster Show's America's Most Beautiful Roadster Award 7 times. He is the only back-to-back winner in the history of that competition. He won the Daimler Chrysler Design Excellence Award twice. He was inducted into the Hot Rod Hall of Fame in 1997, into the SEMA Hall of Fame, the Route 66 Hall of Fame, and the National Rod and Custom Museum Hall of Fame. And the men and women who passed through his shop, the ones he fired, the ones who quit, the ones who left for Chip Foose, went on to win their own awards, open their own operations, and continue building at the highest level. That's the part that doesn't make it into the drama. Boyd Coddington trained people, brutally, chaotically, on impossible deadlines, under real pressure, but he trained them. The skills they developed at his shop were the foundation of careers that outlasted his own. Robert Taylor, who appeared in seasons 4 and 5 of the show, now runs his own fabrication operation out of one of Boyd's former buildings in La Habra. He was also featured on Discovery Channel's Motorcycle Mania, alongside Jesse James, another Boyd alumnus who went on to build his own television career. Thomas Lodby, the popular Swedish mechanic who appeared in all 5 seasons, briefly left to start a shipping business before returning to Boyd's. He was one of the few who kept coming back. The Boyd Coddington name continues to exist in the custom wheel market through Boyd Coddington Wheels, which carries on the billet aluminum design identity he pioneered. The cars he built, the Alumitub, the Silver Bullet, the '61 Impala Bubble Top, the Cadzilla, continue to appear at shows, in collections, and in the kind of automotive conversations that happen when people who really care about this craft get together and start talking. And if you think that's where the story closes, with a man, a shop, and a legacy, there's one last piece that changes everything about what you just heard. American Hot Rod was marketed as a car show. It turned out to be something else. What Discovery Channel captured across 5 seasons was a case study in the difference between brilliance and sustainability. Boyd built extraordinary things. He also built a working environment that couldn't hold talent, couldn't retain loyalty, and ultimately couldn't outlast the man himself. The shop was Boyd. When Boyd was gone, there was nothing to hold it together. Chip Foose built a different kind of operation. Collaborative, structured, designed to survive without any single person being the only one who knew where everything was. He turned overhauling into a long-running show built on goodwill rather than conflict. The people who came from Boyd's shop, Charlie Hutton, Mike Curtis, Scott Parker, found a different atmosphere there. They stayed. That contrast is what American Hot Rod actually documented. Not just the cars, not just the firings. The show was a portrait of what happens when one person's vision is so strong that it excludes everyone else's. The cars lasted, the shop didn't. Every crew member who left Boyd's and opened their own operation or went to work somewhere with better conditions made a quiet argument against the idea that pressure is what produces excellence. Roy Schmidt, the man who stayed through the hardest years, who worked with lung cancer until he couldn't anymore, he made that argument better than any of them. What the show gave people was access to a world most of them had never seen and will never enter. The skill those people possessed was real. The machines they built were real. And the fact that they all found their way after the cameras stopped, that's as real as it gets. The crew of American Hot Rod didn't just survive the end of the show. Most of them thrived because the skills were always theirs, not the buildings. Boyd Coddington's legacy sits in 2 different places. In the cars, 7-time winner at Oakland, the Cadzilla, the Boyd look that reshaped an entire industry's idea of what a hot rod could be. And in the people, Chip Foose, Jesse James, Charlie Hutton, Mike Curtis, and a generation of builders who learned their craft inside that shop on Coddington's impossible deadlines and carried it somewhere new. As for what comes next, the Boyd Coddington name continues in the wheel business. The men and women who built under his roof continue to build, and every time a billet aluminum wheel rolls past on a custom rod, somewhere in its DNA is a farm kid from Rupert, Idaho, who traded a shotgun for a truck and never once stopped working. So here's the question. Boyd Coddington built a career that shaped everyone around him and still couldn't hold those people close. Do you think the environment inside that shop made his crew better builders, or did it just push the best ones out the door?